November 3, 1987. A cold Tuesday morning in Baltimore. One of those days where the air feels like it's been sharpened overnight. Frost rims the car windows outside the FBI field office on Fayette Street, and the sky hangs low, heavy with gray clouds. Inside, fluorescent lights hum over desks stacked with case files and styrofoam cups. FBI Special Agent Daniel Rourke, 42, walks through the narrow corridor, his coat slung over one shoulder, his eyes carrying that same tired resolve they've held since '79. No one remembers him saying goodbye. He left the office at exactly 9:42 m. Surveillance footage shows him exiting through the east lobby, nodding at the front desk agent, his badge clipped to his belt, holstered weapon secured, cup of coffee in hand. He looked like a man heading toward something routine. But Daniel Rourke never came back. 12 hours later, his bureau-issued Buick was found idling outside an abandoned diner on the edge of Route 40, an old truck stop nicknamed the Devil's Elbow. The diner had been closed for over a decade. Vines clawed up its walls. Windows were boarded. It was the kind of place that made even rats think twice. Inside the car, his wallet, badge, weapon, and an uneaten bagel. The driver's seat was pushed back slightly, as if he'd leaned to rest. The only fingerprint on the steering wheel was his dot. She stood, shaking, phone in hand, staring at the blood on the floor. But in this case, there was no blood. No struggle, just silence. Agent Henry Kessler, Rourke's supervising officer, got the call at 11:06 p.m. He's not the kind of man to go dark, Kessler told Internal Affairs later that night. Daniel followed the book down to the punctuation. Something's wrong. Kessler had known Rourke for over a decade. Recruited him straight out of Chicago PD, where Rourke had earned a rep for working missing persons like he could smell lies. They called him the Bloodhound, not because he was aggressive, but because he never let go once he picked up a scent. There was no official case file opened that night. Not yet. Just a line item marked Unexplained Absence, stapled to a logbook. But by morning, everyone in the unit was whispering. 1 week later, the Bureau quietly began a missing persons investigation. No press release, no bolo alert, nothing public, because Agent Daniel Rourke had been working on something off the books, too. Weeks before his disappearance, Rourke had been in West Virginia, allegedly reviewing closed case files for training purposes. But no paperwork ever showed the request. He'd rented a motel under his real name, unusual for him, and signed a log in cursive, instead of the standard print block letters agents were trained to use. He left behind no notebooks, no recordings, no trail, not even a torn post-it. One thing did surface, quietly. In a maintenance locker behind his desk, hidden inside a hollowed-out crime scene photo book, was a list, handwritten. 11 names, half of them crossed out. No context, just names. The last name was Claire D., underlined twice. Daniel's wife, Evelyn Rourke, was questioned 3 times. She told investigators he'd been distant for months, sleeping less, jumping at sudden sounds, and once waking up in a sweat whispering, "They're watching from inside." He wasn't paranoid, she insisted. He was cautious. But this was different. Different how? The agent asked. He started writing letters, like goodbye letters, but never addressed, just stacked them in the garage. Those letters were never found. By January 1988, the case had hit a dead end. No body, no sightings, no ransom, no leads. The Bureau quietly shelved the investigation. Rourke was declared presumed deceased in February 1989. An empty casket was buried in Greenmount Cemetery. Closed case. Officially, anyway. But unofficially, Henry Kessler kept looking. Daniel didn't just vanish. He told his wife in 1991, "Men like him don't run." Someone ran him down. And then, 5 years later, out of nowhere it all came crashing back. On April 19, 1992, a facility in Winterwood, Pennsylvania, sent a routine eviction notice to an overdue customer. No one responded. They cracked open the steel door. The air inside was moldy, stale. Mice had nested under cardboard boxes. but in the back corner stood a steel locker, bolted shut. No ID, no markings. When they opened it, they didn't find furniture. They didn't find junk, they found bones. And an FBI case file from 1987, with a single post-it note still clinging to the cover. Rourke, don't file this yet. The Wynnewood storage facility sat like a forgotten tomb on the outskirts of Philadelphia, tucked behind a chain-link fence and a hardware store that hadn't had working neon in years. It was the kind of place people used when they needed to disappear quiet, cash-based, and unbothered by questions. Unit number 609 had been rented under the name Samuel Carter. But there was no Samuel Carter, just a fake ID, a disconnected number, and 5 years of dust layered over the truth. It took a bolt cutter to break the lock. The steel door rolled up with a scream. Inside, the unit looked like nothing. A few broken shelves, a torn mattress, a rusted lamp, but at the back, anchored to the wall by 2 industrial padlocks, stood a military-grade footlocker, dented, but intact. The air turned colder around it, as if it knew what was coming. The agent's gloves trembled slightly as he cracked the final lock. The hinge snapped, the lid creaked, and the world changed. Inside, a human jawbone, yellowed with time. 3 old FBI case folders, one marked Claire Donovan, classified internal use only, and a small, faded photograph. A woman, pale red hair pulled back, standing beside a mailbox somewhere rural. She looked over her shoulder, half smiling at someone behind the camera. Behind the photo, written in blue ink, Alina Ford. December 1985, Claire Donovan, Alina Ford, same woman, different names. Back at the Philadelphia field office, agents ran both identities. The results didn't make sense. Claire had worked for the Justice Department as a typist from 1982 to 1985. Her record was clean, until she suddenly quit on, disappeared. Alina Ford, meanwhile, had a death certificate. Overdose. Late 1986. Cremated. Closed case. You can't be cremated and stored in a box at the same time. Agent Dina Herrera muttered, unless someone screwed with both files. DNA from the jawbone confirmed it. Claire Donovan was not dead. The files in the locker weren't official. They had Rourke's handwriting all over them, notes scrawled in the margins, names underlined, page numbers circled. One was titled, Subject. See Internal Surveillance Notes. Page 3 read. She lied about her job, about the man she lived with, lied about where she went that night. But I saw the bruise on her collarbone. Someone was keeping her quiet. The tone of the notes changed across the pages, less clinical, more personal. One entry was simply, if anything happens to me, it was someone inside. Agent Henry Kessler was flown in under bureau hush orders. He hadn't heard Daniel Rourke's name in 3 years. Not publicly, not aloud. You're telling me that jaw came from a dead woman with 2 names, he asked. We're saying? She might not have been the only one playing a role, Herrera replied. Kessler flipped through the documents and froze at one page. A surveillance photo. Daniel Rourke, sitting in a parked car, zoomed from across the street. He looked straight into the lens. It wasn't taken by another agent, it was taken of him. The photo dropped from Kessler's fingers like a dead leaf. The room felt suddenly airless, like they'd kicked open something that didn't want to be disturbed. A second folder revealed a rental agreement, a motel room in Wheeling, West Virginia, paid in cash and under the name C. Donovan. The date, 2 weeks before Daniel vanished, and taped to the back of that page. A key card still magnetized, marked room 614. You think this locker was meant to be found? Herrera asked. No, Kessler said slowly. I think Daniel knew it wouldn't be. That's why he left breadcrumbs. Later that night, alone, in his hotel room, Kessler reread one of Rourke's field notes. She said they promised her protection. But what they really gave her was a cage, I think. I think she knew something she wasn't supposed to. I think she trusted me. Kessler lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. He hadn't smoked in years. Claire Donovan, Alina Ford. Whatever name she wore, it didn't matter. Someone made her disappear. Then they made Daniel disappear. 2. The next day, the agents drove to Wheeling. The motel still stood barely. Now called Econo Royal, the paint peeled from the sign, and half the lights inside flickered like a dying pulse. Room 614 was still there, still on record. The manager didn't even ask questions, just handed over the key. Inside, the air reeked of mildew and dust. Everything looked untouched. The bed was stripped, the curtains rotted, and behind the nightstand, a fresh line of caulking. Where the wall had been sealed, she stood, staring, flashlight in hand, at the bulge behind the drywall. This was patched recently. They pulled back the plaster with bare hands. Behind it, nestled inside the wall cavity, was a small audio recorder. Wrapped in a red scarf, and 5 rolls of undeveloped 35mm film, Kessler pressed play. The tape hissed, clicked, then a low breath, movement, then a whisper, broken, panicked, a man's voice. He knows. Henry Kessler hadn't flown in 10 years. Now, as the wheels touched down in Wheeling, West Virginia, he felt the weight of something he hadn't carried in a long time: unfinished business. The last time he was here, it was 1987, and Daniel Rourke was alive. Rourke had asked for backup. Kessler hadn't sent it. He never forgot that. The motel stood crooked and tired on the edge of a hill, like it was leaning away from the world. Royal Econo Lodge, the kind of place where no one asked questions, where rooms were paid in cash and cleaned just enough to avoid lawsuits. Room 614 hadn't been touched in years. Dust on every surface, curtains rotting, carpet stiff with time. But it was the patched drywall behind, the headboard, that told the truth. The fresh caulking caught the light strangely, like a scar trying to heal over something deeper. They tore it open carefully. Inside, 5 rolls of undeveloped FILMA red silk scarf, frayed at the edges, and an old battered tape recorder wrapped in plastic and sealed with duct tape. Kessler didn't speak. He just pressed play. The room filled with static, then breathing, then a voice, shaky, close to the mic. "This is Special Agent Daniel Rourke. If you're hearing this, I was right." She was going to testify. They stopped her, and now they're coming for me. Then silence. Then a gun cocking. Then the tape ended. Rourke hadn't just disappeared. He knew he would, and he wanted someone to find this. Kessler sat on the edge of the motel bed, staring down at the scarf. Claire was the key. He muttered, and I walked away. I buried him before he was dead. Back in Philadelphia, forensic results confirmed the jawbone. Female, mid-30s, red hair, likely Claire Donovan. But there was more. In the folds of the scarf was a thumb drive, wrapped in TIN, FOIL, encrypted, and dated October 18, 1987. 4 days before Daniel vanished, the IT team cracked it within an hour. Inside were surveillance images, dozens of them. Most were grainy. Street shots, license plates, people entering buildings. But 3 photos stood out in all 3. Daniel Rourke was visible sitting alone, eating, walking. Each time, a man stood nearby. Always the same man, clean-cut, grey suit, thin wire in his ear, unknown, unidentified, but always watching. Someone was following him, Herrera said. Someone who didn't care about being seen. "That's not surveillance," Kessler replied. "That's a warning." The images were time-stamped, one of them taken outside a cafe in D.C., citing from a whistleblower letter sent to the Bureau in 1989, now buried under low-credibility reports. The letter claimed that Daniel Rourke had discovered a corruption ring operating from inside the Justice Department. Blackmail, witness tampering, evidence suppression. Names weren't mentioned. But the letter said one thing clearly: they used Claire Donovan. They used her like bait. And when she wanted out, they erased her. The letter was unsigned, but the wording matched Rourke's case. Notes. A single desk lamp cast a circle of light in the evidence room. Kessler leaned over the table like a man sifting through ashes, knowing he buried the fire himself. He opened Daniel's last case file, the one marked C. Donovan, tucked behind. The last page was a note written on hotel stationery. Rourke's handwriting. Kessler, I know what they did to Claire, and I know what they'll do to me. You told me to let it go. You were wrong. If this is all you find of me, know this, she didn't lie. They did. That night, Kessler sat in his hotel room and finally allowed himself to grieve. I told him not to dig too deep, he whispered to himself. And when he started drowning, I didn't even throw a rope. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon, looked out the window, and saw nothing but darkness. Early next morning, Kessler called Herrera. There's more to this, he said. The locker, the motel, the thumb drive. They're not clues, they're a map. And we've only seen the first stop. Herrera paused. You think someone's still out there? No, Kessler said. I know someone is. The team dug deeper into Rourke's files and cross-checked names. One stood out, a bureau liaison who signed off on Claire Donovan's employment clearance back in 1984. A man named Andrew Lowell. On paper, he retired in 1986. But Kessler remembered the name, because in 1989, just 2 years after Daniel vanished, Lowell was spotted on a closed-circuit feed at the FBI's Denver field office, walking into a restricted server room. His clearance had been revoked 3 years earlier, and just like Claire, he disappeared next. The motel hadn't changed, if anything. It looked worse. The neon sign outside blinked Econo Royal in slow dying gasps. The parking lot was cracked like old bones, and the lobby smelled like someone had tried to cover mold with air freshener and lost. Room 614 was at the far end of the second floor. Still vacant, still ignored, the kind of place you'd walk past, faster without knowing why. Inside, the air was still. Too still, no breeze, no hum of electricity. Just silence that clung to the wallpaper. Agent Dina Herrera stood in the doorway. Gloved hands crossed over her chest. You ever feel like a room remembers, she muttered. Rooms don't forget, Kessler replied. People do. They were here with purpose now. The first visit had been discovery. This one was dissection. The drywall patch behind the headboard had already been opened once. But now, they took the wall apart meticulously, inch by inch. No more careful. No more waiting. Hidden behind the insulation, they found a second cavity deep. Then the first. Someone had built a false back wall. Inside it were a rusted voice recorder, different from the first day woman's red blouse, bloodstained at the collar and a motel Bible, hollowed out. Inside it, a flash drive and a ring plane, silver, engraved CD. Forgive me, Jesus, Herrera whispered. She left a piece of herself here. Kessler didn't answer. He was staring at the ring. They bagged everything and returned to the field lab in Philadelphia. The blood on the blouse matched the DNA from the jawbone. Claire Donovan had bled in that room, but the flash drive was the real story. It held 2 files. One was a blurry video, timestamped October 15, 1987. The other was a digital letter, UNSENT. The video showed a motel room. This room, Claire sat at the edge of the bed. She looked exhausted, gaunt eyes flickering toward the door like she expected someone to burst in. She pressed her lips together, then spoke. If you're seeing this, I'm probably gone. I wasn't part of it, I swear, they used me. I didn't know who he really was, not until DR told me. But by then it was too late. She hesitated. They made me lie. Said they'd protect me. Said if I disappeared, they'd make it look clean. But he tried to save me. She lifted something toward the camera. The ring he gave me this. Said we could leave together, but I couldn't. I was already marked. The video cut out. The letter was addressed simply to whoever finds this. It read like a confession and a death warrant. Claire named names. None directly, but titles, initials, dates. Enough for investigators to reference, enough to make it dangerous. This wasn't just a missing person, Herrera said. It was a cover operation. They buried her alive in paperwork. Kessler muttered, and they did the same to Daniel. But something still didn't fit. If Claire knew she was marked, if she expected to die, why was her jawbone found in Pennsylvania, not here? Someone moved her, Someone made sure her body was found, which meant someone was still out there. In the lab's dim light, the blood-stained blouse seemed to breathe. Every thread whispered what no one had listened to in 1987, the voice recorder. From the second wall, cavity had degraded, but after hours of restoration, a sliver of audio came through. ... We meet Thursday. You give me the files, or I show them everything. You owe me that. No, Claire, you don't understand. They already know. They're already watching you. The first voice was hers. The second, deep, calm, authoritative, was not Daniel Rourke. Kessler played it again, and again, until his hand clenched into a fist. That's someone high up, he said. Someone with command in his voice. Like he thought he owned her. Herrera raised an eyebrow. Rourke mentioned a name in his journal. Reed, could be. A code name, or worse, Kessler replied. Could be a rank. One more item was recovered from behind the Waller single matchbook from a bar in D.C. Stuffed inside the hollow Bible, on the back a numbered dot and one word in shaky handwriting. Help. They called her the redhead on the 9th floor. Back in 1984, Claire Donovan worked in a restricted records wing of the Justice Department. Just 9 floors up from the street-level chaos of D.C. politics. She wore tailored suits, filed quietly, and kept her head down. A ghost with a clearance badge. And yet, everyone remembered her. Not because she stood out, because she didn't. She had a smile you forgot the second she left. She walked without making a sound. And when she vanished in late 1985, no one asked questions because no one noticed in the first place. But now, in 1992, 7 years later, they were asking. Agent Herrera tracked down Claire's former roommate, a retired DOJ clerk named Janine Reardon, who now lived alone in a condo in Arlington. She opened the door slowly, peeking through the chain lock. Claire, what about her? Janine asked. She worked with you in '84. We're reopening a case she was involved in. Janine hesitated. I thought she was dead. Then her voice cracked, but I knew it. I knew that wasn't the end of her story. The agents sat with her over cold tea and quiet tears. Slowly, memories came spilling out. She was nervous all the time, Janine said, always checking the blinds. One night she woke up screaming, said there was a man in the hallway, not a dream, real, and then she changed, started dressing differently, quit dating, became ... secretive. You think she was being followed? Herrera asked. No, Janine replied. I think she was owned. Kessler stepped forward. Was she seeing anyone? Janine paused. There was one man, never met him, but he left her notes, slipped under the door. Sometimes she'd cry after reading them, said he wanted to pull her out. I think he loved her. Kessler didn't need to ask who, he knew. Daniel. Later that night, they combed through archived DOJ personnel logs and visitor records. One document, long misfiled, showed Daniel Rourke had accessed the 9th floor in August 1985, on a Saturday. No assignment, no escort. The security log had a handwritten edit, authorized per AL initials, no name, but it matched one from Claire's digital letter. Al was part of it. He vouched for me, then turned. AL Andrew Lowell. The same bureau liaison who retired in 1986. The same one caught on a Denver security feed years later, long after his credentials were revoked. And now, a ghost like Claire. They tracked Lowell to an old property deed in Silver Spring, Maryland, a condo owned under a shell company. Inside, the unit had been untouched for years. But, in a locked drawer, they found a photograph, Claire and Lowell, standing side by side, both smiling. She was wearing the same red blouse that had been found in room 614, now bloodstained, back then pristine, on the back CD and AL 1985, Colorado. The truth hit like a body blow. Claire and Lowell weren't just co-workers, they were connected. And if Rourke had found out, it changed everything. Herrera laid the photo on the table beside Rourke's field notes. You see, this. Daniel underlined her name twice, but he never wrote Lowell's, not once, because he didn't know. Kessler replied, not yet, or he knew, and couldn't face it. That night, Herrera couldn't sleep. She went back through Claire's unsent digital letter, one line sticking out. He said, "If I left him, I'd be untraceable." And I was. For years. Until Daniel found me. A pattern was forming. Claire had been passed around first by the system, then by men who claimed to protect her. Rourke had tried to save her, but he didn't know the full story. Maybe no one did. Next morning, a lab technician burst into the field office. "We just got a hit," he said, panting. The name from the matchbook, the DC bar. Someone checked the phone number, and Herrera asked. It was registered to a bureau. Desk line. Internal extension. Classified division. The number hadn't existed since October 1987. But in the building's internal map, the phone line belonged to a secure office used for witness relocation coordination. Program Claire had typed files for. A new theory took shape, one that made the agents feel sick. What if Claire wasn't just a victim? What if she had been used to bait someone deeper inside? And what if Daniel wasn't following a missing person, but chasing a trap set for himself? Herrera looked up at Kessler, her voice tight. "This goes beyond corruption." "Yeah," he said. "This is architecture. Someone built this from the inside." One final clue came from the photo negatives found in room 614. After development, 3 key shots emerged. A man in a dark suit, handing Claire an envelope. Rourke in a parked car, staring straight ahead, unfocused. A building entry. Log showing Andrew Lowell, signing in under the name Reed. Claire hadn't lied about Reed. He was real, and he wasn't some outsider. He was inside the bureau, and he was using fake names, false trails, and the witness relocation program to vanish people. It arrived in a manila envelope with no return address. Stamped, "From Toledo, Ohio," postmarked 3 days ago, no prints, no note. Just one thing inside, a copy of an old internal memo, yellowed and CREASED. On top. Classified, "Do not file." Below that, a sticky note in faded blue ink. "They buried this once. Don't let them do it again." It was dated November 6, 1987. 3 days after Daniel Rourke vanished, Agent Dina Herrera stared at it in silence. "Who even knew we were digging this up again?" "Everyone who shouldn't," Kessler answered. "And apparently, someone who still gives a damn." The memo was unsigned, routed through the FBI Ethics Oversight Branch, and titled plainly, "Possible compromise in DOJ Witness Protection Division." Internal actor suspected. It detailed an anonymous report from someone claiming to be inside the Justice Relocation Unit, stating that case files were being manipulated. Identities rewritten not to protect witnesses, but to eliminate them. One paragraph was highlighted. The woman known as Claire Donovan was removed from the registry. Manually on October 29, 85, no transfer, no signature, no alert to the marshal's office. This was not a clerical error. Someone made her disappear on purpose. Herrera flipped the page. There were notes, names partially redacted, but initials left intact. AL suspected handler. DR contacted subject prior to disappearance, subject CD. Considered unstable, but knowledgeable. Potential risk if contacted by external agents. Kessler rubbed his face. They knew Rourke was on her trail, and they watched it happen. Let it happen. This wasn't a leak, Herrera said. This was a trap set from within. In a sealed section of the Bureau's digital archives, Herrera found a match, a file labeled WX773, Intake Confidential. It was a whistleblower file. Flagged once, buried twice. The original complaint had been filed under a pseudonym, V. Dante. It was a real name. A real person. An IT analyst stationed at the Washington HQ in 1987. Discharged on mental health grounds in 1989. Labeled unstable. Never heard from again. They found him outside Cincinnati, living under a new name. Victor Dante. 61. Legally blind in one eye. Surviving on disability checks and cigarettes. His apartment was dark, dusty, and paranoid. Foil in the windows. Static. On the TV, walls covered in newspaper clippings, Most faded, some circled. You took your time, he said. The second Herrera stepped inside. You remember Claire Donovan? She asked. Victor nodded slowly. You never forget the ones they erase. He hadn't spoken to anyone about it in over 30 years. But once the floodgates opened, it all poured out. They were rewriting identity-scrubbing names from internal records. I found a routing command that bypassed audit logs, buried in a dev folder, named after a dead janitor. That's how deep it went. Claire came in with an identity that was too clean, too perfect. No errors, no history, red flag, and then she was just ... gone. I flagged it, filed it up the chain. 3 days later, my wife's brakes failed. Coincidence? Maybe, but I knew then they wanted me quiet. Victor didn't have hard evidence anymore, but he did remember something specific. A name. She kept saying one word over and over when I saw her in the hallway. Red. Not like a name. Like a warning. Herrera looked at Kessler. That's our guy. She wasn't just afraid of him. She was trying to get someone else to listen. And Daniel did, Kessler said. Which is why they took him to... Victor pulled something from a shoebox under his couch. A microcassette tape, unmarked. This is all I kept. I didn't dare play it back, but I recorded it in October '87. A phone call patch routed through the bureau servers. The system flagged it, but no one noticed. Back at the lab, they ran the tape. It was fuzzy, grainy, and distorted. But the voices were there. Man, one low, firm. You're not getting out of this clean. Woman, urgent. I never wanted in. They used me. Man one. Then you should have stayed quiet. Rourke is too close. Woman, he's the only one who sees it. You can't kill us both. Man one. Watch me. Then a click. End of call. The silence afterward was like a scream swallowed whole. Herrera sat back, stunned. We just heard her die. No, Kessler said. We just heard her try to live. Victor Dante's tip triggered a reopened ethics investigation. Quiet, buried under codenames and black budgets. But Herrera and Kessler were no longer asking permission. They had one shot left to follow this deeper. And it meant chasing down the only man still missing from the board, Andrew Lowell, also known as Reed. And according to new surveillance data from a flagged foreign passport... he had resurfaced. In Buenos Aires, he called himself Reed, but there was no Reed in any bureau file, no Reed on any passtub, any pension, any personnel list. Just a phantom codename. A whisper behind ruined lives, and now he was in Buenos Aires. The intel came from Interpol-flagged passport belonging to Arthur Lennox, age 72, U.S. origin, retired. Diplomat, but the facial recognition told another story. Andrew Lowell, Bureau Liaison, presumed dead in 1990. Last seen entering a secure server room in Denver, 5 years after his retirement. Now, he was sipping espresso in Palermo, Soho, living in plain sight with a tan and a new name. Agent Henry Kessler didn't go through official channels. He didn't have time for that. He called in a favor from a contact at Langley, booked a cash flight, and landed in Argentina 36 hours later, carrying nothing but a burner phone, a passport, and 2 decades of regret. The Buenos Aires air was heavy with heat and late summer jasmine. Streets pulsed with cafe chatter and cobblestones, but under it all a current ran cold. Because this wasn't a stakeout. This was an execution. Of ghosts, Kessler sat across the plaza, watching the man who used to be Andrew Lowell. He was older, shore grey hair, reading glasses. Slight limp but unmistakably him. He stirred his coffee with precision. Still wore bureau-issue watches, still read his newspaper folded in half, just like in DC, but his eyes, they hadn't aged. They were still cold. Still calculating, still watching. You gonna sit there all day, Henry? Kessler froze. The voice came from behind. Him come, quiet, close. Or are we gonna finally talk like two old ghosts with bad memories? Lowell stepped into view and sat down at Kessler's table. No panic, no denial, just presence. He didn't look surprised. He looked ready. You went to a lot of trouble, Lowell said, sipping. I suppose this is about Claire. It's about Daniel, Kessler replied, and her, and everyone else you chewed up and buried. Lowell nodded. That's fair. Kessler leaned in. She loved you, didn't she? She trusted me. Lowell corrected. Which is worse? There it was. The monster's smile, thin, tired, unapologetic. You didn't just erase her, you used her. Kessler hissed. We all used her, Lowell said calmly. Some of us admitted it. A breeze picked up. Napkins fluttered off tables nearby. But at this table, nothing moved except the memories clenching like fists. Kessler pulled a small recorder from his coat pocket. Say it, he said. On record. Lowell just laughed. You think this is justice, Henry? You're 20 years too late. Everyone who mattered is either dead or promoted. Then Lowell leaned forward. You want a name? You already had it. But you buried it, just like they told you to. Kessler's hand trembled. You're talking about Reed. I was Red, Lowell said. But I wasn't the only one. He tapped his fingers once, twice. A code from old habits. There was another name on that program. Another ghost. He made me disappear, just like I did to Claire and Daniel. But there's one difference. What? I regret it. In the heat haze, the cafe dissolved into silence. People laughed in the distance. A car alarm chirped somewhere, but the plaza went still as death. Lowell reached into his coat. Slowly Kessler tensed, but he pulled out only a USB drive. Wrapped in a red napkin. Everything I have left, the list, the routing system, the shell accounts, proof of the operation, and Claire, she tried to escape. I let her think she had. You're giving this to me out of guilt? Kessler asked. No, Lowell said. I'm giving it to you because I'm dying. He stood up slowly. You were always better than me, Henry. Even when you were a coward, you don't get to say that. Sure I do, Lowell said, walking away. No one's left to stop me. Kessler watched him limp into the crowd. He could have followed, could have arrested him, could have pulled a gun and ended it. But there was no glory left in chasing skeletons, only closure. Back in his hotel room, Kessler plugged in the USB. A folder opened. Operation Heron. Inside were decades of files, fake identities, falsified deaths, rerouted witness protections. Claire Donovan was just one of many. Daniel Rourke, one of the few who noticed. Victor Dante, a voice in the dark. And somewhere on that list, Kessler found his own name. Target. H. Kessler. Suppressed in 1989. File closed by ALR2. Suppressed. Not erased. They had tried to bury him too, but he crawled out of the grave. Now, it was his turn to dig up theirs. The files were a bomb. Not metaphorically. Literally, if the right person saw them, the bureau would burn. And that was the point. Inside the USB, Lowell handed over. There were 42 classified folders, each tied to a vanished individual. Supposedly under witness protection, all presumed relocated or dead. The files told a different story. No marshals, no paperwork, no follow-through. Instead, each subject had been flagged, accessed by internal Heron clearance, labeled at risk of exposure, and tagged for permanent non-trace status. Claire Donovan, Daniel Rourke, even Victor Dante. They weren't protected. They were disappeared by the government that claimed to shield them. Kessler stared at the screen as the names scrolled past. Each one a nail in a coffin. He never realized he helped build. At the center of the operation, a black site server node, located somewhere off-grid and referred to only as Red Room 6. No coordinates. No personnel roster. No entry logs. Only one name ever accessed it. Reed. But according to the files, there were 2 users assigned to the codename Reed. A.L. Andrew Loalatu, unknown, and that was where everything unraveled. Agent Herrera brought in a systems forensics expert from Quantico to authenticate the data. Her name was Monica Pritchard, and she'd seen things scrubbed that shouldn't exist. After 20 minutes of sifting code and cross-referencing firewall shells, she leaned back from the laptop. These files are clean. Not spoofed, not deepfaked. This is the real thing. Herrera exhaled. Then we're sitting on proof of a decades-long execution program. No, Monica said, you're sitting on a list of who's next. Because one folder had recent TIMESTAMPS. Meaning Operation Heron wasn't dead, it was still active. And the most recent target, Agent Dina Herrera, flagged last week. Red Room 6 clearance, read 2, subject, D, Herrera, code tier, yellow to red justification. Active pursuit containment, pending. Kessler stood frozen. Herrera stared at her name like it didn't belong to her. They're watching us, she whispered. They're planning to erase you, Kessler said, voice cracking. Just like they did Daniel. Herrera's phone buzzed. No caller ID, just one word on screen, run. She threw it across the room, in the packing lot outside the Bureau's field office. A black sedan idled with tinted windows. Engine humming. No plates. No driver visible. Inside, every hair on Kessler's neck stood on end. They weren't just targets now, they were next. They needed a firewall. A leak big enough to make this unkillable. Monica uploaded the drive to a Deadman secure leak protocol with a timed release. Unless someone input the password every 12 hours, you die. It drops, she said. Everything. Every file. No way to stop it. Next, Herrera contacted a journalist she trusted from her days. Investigating trafficking rings. Name, Alex Rumman, credible, quiet. With a history of surviving lawsuits and death threats, he answered on the third ring. You're early, he said. I'm late, Herrera replied. Meet me tonight. No cameras, no tape recorders. This one burns through microphones. That night, they met in the back of a closed Vietnamese diner near DC's Union Market. No one else inside. Herrera placed the USB on the table. This is going to change everything you think you know about the justice system. Alex looked at hers, skeptical but curious. How dangerous. People disappeared. Good people. Some of them were us. And now they want to make me. The next file. A sudden gust outside slammed the back door open. Herrera jumped. Alex's pen froze mid-note. Nothing, just wind. But they both knew they were being watched. After handing him encrypted copies, Herrera gave him the one condition. If I die, publish. Don't wait. Don't investigate. Just blow it wide. What? If you're wrong, then I die for nothing. But if I'm right, she looked out the window. You bring ghosts back to life. Meanwhile, Kessler dug deeper into the list. He found a name he'd missed before. Julian Mercer, former assistant deputy director, retired suddenly in 1986, disappeared 2 years later. One note in the file stood out. Mercer knew about Red Room 6, refused participation, escalated to R2. Result: containment approved. They killed him for saying no, which meant someone in the current bureau approved these hits. Someone still in the building, and possibly still using the read decoder and errors. As Herrera's face flickered on the CCTV of the bureau garage, someone watched her from a nearby terminal. They didn't type, just observed. .com. Clinical, familiar. The monitor showed her tagged, D, Herrera, tier, red, escalate. It started with a flicker, not a bomb. Not a bullet, just a system update request inside bureau. Servers, the kind no one notices. The kind that gets ignored. But this time, it wasn't from it was from Red Room 6, and it came with a kill string. Inside the Quantico field server, Monica Pritchard's eyes widened. They're trying to breach the Deadman system. She whispered. Pereira leaned over her shoulder. Can they get in? Not unless someone on our side gives them the key. She didn't say the other part out loud. Not unless someone already had. Herrera looked at Kessler across the room. We've got a traitor. Kessler didn't flinch. He was already thinking one step ahead. Then we do what whistleblowers never. Could we fight back before the silence? They made a list. 10 people still active in DC who had clearance high enough to authorize the Heron tags. 9 of them checked out. The 10th. Deputy Director John M. Blaine. A 30-year veteran. The one who signed Herrera's reassignment orders just 2 weeks ago. The same man who gave Lowell his off-the-books clearance in 1986. The same one who vouched for Andrew Lowell in his original transfer file. Blaine had always been background, a shadow in meetings. The quiet nod behind decisions. But shadows are where the rot lives. Herrera requested a private meeting. She told no one where she was going. The elevator ride to Blaine's office felt like descending into a grave. The 9th floor hadn't changed since Claire worked there. Same walls, same silence, same system built on quiet obedience. Blaine stood by the window, back turned, as Herrera entered. "I heard about your investigation," he said without looking. "Then you know why I'm here," Herrera replied. Blaine finally turned, calm. "Not surprised, you've been digging in dangerous places, Agent." "So did Claire Donovan. And she died for it." Silence filled the room like poison. "Was it you?" she asked. "Reed 2. Blaine tilted his head. "There was no Reed 2, there is only Reed. It just wears different faces. The operation needed continuity. You gave the order on Raw. You buried Claire. You tagged me. You left me no choice." He said it like a man discussing paperwork, not lives. "The system doesn't protect people like you, Agent Herrera. It survives people like you." She pulled the USB drive from her coat, set it on his desk. "This says otherwise. No one will believe it. That's why it goes public tonight." Blaine looked amused. "Then you're already dead." Suddenly, the lights flickered. Herrera's phone buzzed. "Monica. The Deadman server's been hit. Someone inside just disabled the 12-hour timer. The leak won't drop." Herrera froze. "Who did it?" "We traced the access. It came from your account." Back in the field office, Kessler stared at the system log. Override authorization. D. Herrera admin key. Valid. Someone had cloned her credentials, and now it looked like she had stopped the leak. Worse. It gave them cause to arrest her. A click came from behind. In Blaine's office. 2 internal agents stepped in. Agent Herrera, one said, hand on his holster. "You're being detained for unauthorized access and evidence manipulation." Blaine didn't smile, but his eyes said it all. Checkmate. She didn't resist, didn't argue, just locked eyes with Blaine. "You won't survive the next leak." "Don't need to," he said. "I've already won." Downstairs, Kessler knew the clock had run out. But he still had one card left. He met Monica in the server room and handed her a second drive. One he never told Herrera about. A clone of the original, stored on a cold device, untouched, unedited, still armed. "Can it still drop?" he asked. "If I reroute it to a non-federal trigger," she said. "Do it. Set it for 72 hours. If I don't kill the circuit, let it all fly." He turned toward the security monitor where he saw Herrera being led away in cuffs. Head held high. Silent, unbroken. That night, Kessler made the call. Not to the bureau, to Alex Rumman, the journalist. "She's been set up. They framed her. You need to go live now." "What about the verification?" Alex asked. "You'll have it, but you better run fast, because this story's gonna draw blood." Meanwhile, Blaine met with a man in an underground garage 2 blocks from the Capitol. Tall, clean-cut, no name tag. The last thing Blaine said, before handing over the folder, Phase 2, start silencing the rest. The man nodded. "What about Herrera? Let her rot, she break." Then the man walked away. The folder tucked under his arm like a death sentence. There's a kind of silence that settles when power believes it's one. Not the calm of peace. The stillness of control, like the quiet inside a sealed room. Before the gases turned on, Herrera sat cuffed to a table in room 7C. The bureau's internal containment wing. No clocks, no windows, no badge access except from the top. 3 cameras, 2 guards, 1 goal, breaker, across town, journalist. Alex Rumman stared at the flash drive, labeled op-heron_final. Unedited, unencrypted terminal. He was sweating through his shirt, because on his screen were names, real names. People who had vanished. People who were alive, but no longer people in the system. They were tags, redacted footnotes. Evidence of a machine built to delete problems, and anyone who noticed them. The leak was scheduled to auto-publish in 72 hours, unless manually stopped. That stop key was in the hands of only one man, Colin Kessler. And now Kessler was staring at a black envelope slipped under his hotel room door, inside a photo of his daughter, a post-it note attached. If the leak goes live, she doesn't. Signed, R-2. He sat on the bed, gun in one hand, photo in the other, and weighed the scales of justice against the body count, back inside room 7C. Herrera was being questioned by a woman with clean nails and cold diction. Her badge said compliance auditor, but everything about her screamed intelligence agent. Where did you get the Heron files? They were given to me. By who? A man you swore didn't exist. The woman's pen clicked. That was her version of fury. You know, obstruction of a federal leak is an act of treason, agent. So is executing Americans in secret. Weren't executed. No, just framed. Which is cheaper? The lights in the room were fluorescent, humming slightly. No shadows, no mercy. Just the sterile glow of manufactured guilt. Meanwhile, Monica Pritchard had been pulled from her post, falsely accused of cybercrime, devices seized, her name placed on a watch list in under 3 hours. She didn't have clearance to fight back, but she did have a copy of the release protocol, buried in a cloud archive under a code phrase she'd memorized since Quantico, Echored Phantom. If Kessler failed, the system wouldn't. But Kessler wasn't thinking about the cloud, or Heron, or even Reed. He was thinking about that photo, and the number scribbled on the back. Call before 6 p.m., you know the cost. It was 5:48. He picked up the burner. Dialed, I'm here. A voice on the other end, deep, disguised. You leak that file, your daughter becomes the next Donovan. Let her go, then cancel the drop. Silence, pure, thick, horrifying silence. But something shifted in Kessler. He thought of Daniel Rourke, staring down the barrel of bureaucracy. He thought of Claire's final message. Don't let him vanish me again. He thought of Herrera, alone, still fighting, and he realized, if he gave in now, he was next. No, he said quietly. Excuse me, I won't stop it. Click, end of call. Back in room 7C. Herrera felt the tremor hit the building. Not an explosion, a pulse. A system breach. Then the door opened. Not a guard, not an interrogator. Alex Rumman, holding a printed news bulletin in one hand, a badge from the Office of Government Ethics in the other. It's live, he said. The story, the files, the names, everything the world knows, as of 20 minutes ago. Yeah, and Kessler, no word. But he's the one who sent the final trigger. The leak had hit Reuters, ProPublica, and the Washington Post. Simultaneously, the internet was on fire. Heron was trending. Donovan became a hashtag. Rourke trended second. Red Room 6 was already a meme, but the meme didn't bring justice, only attention. And attention gets dangerous. That night, Kessler turned himself in. He walked through the bureau's front door, handed in his badge, and requested federal protection, not for himself, for his daughter, the official who met him in the lobby. Deputy Director John Blaine. Only now, everyone knew who Blaine really was. You lost, Kessler said. Blaine looked tired, beaten, small. You think a leak is justice. The system will survive, maybe, but now it limps. By midnight, Blaine had been placed under investigation. Multiple assets in the Heron program had gone dark. The Senate launched a subcommittee, and Red Room 6 gone wiped, like it had never existed, but the leak existed. And so did the names. 6 weeks after the Heron leak went global, Congress held its first closed-door hearing on extralegal deletion programs. The room was packed. Cameras were banned. Testimony was sealed, but one woman's voice still found a way through. Not Herrera's, not even Kessler's. Claire Donovan. The audio file came from a retired bureau Voltec who'd stolen a tape 38 years ago. It had been marked Evidence Room. Destroy, after review. He never had the nerve to play it until now. It opened with static, then breathing, Then Claire's voice, shaky but clear. "This is Claire Donovan. If you're hearing this, I'm either dead, disappeared, or worse, forgotten. I was recruited into something I didn't understand, and by the time I did, it was too late to leave. They used my name, my clearance, my heart, and when I tried to stop them, they told me I was unstable." Her voice cracked. "The man I loved wasn't a man at all. He was red. That's what they called him, but he wasn't alone. There was another, higher, smarter, meaner. The one they were all afraid of. He didn't give orders, he just watched, like God with a clipboard. They called him the Architect." Herrera listened to the tape in her apartment, tears sliding quietly down her cheek. Claire had been more than a ghost in the system. She was the canary. And no one heard her song until now. Kessler, now under protective watch in a remote facility, heard the tape from a laptop. Alone, he stopped breathing when he heard the name, because it was a name he'd seen once. Deep inside Lowell's folder, a name he'd assumed was just a consultant. Long forgotten, El Caro, Internal Compliance Advisor, 1983 to 1994. The Architect, still alive, still listed, still advising external security programs. Through a private defense contractor, still pulling strings. In the last minute of the tape, Claire's voice quieted. "I know how this ends. They'll come for me, they might already be here, but I need someone to remember. Daniel Rourke believed me. And if you're hearing this, maybe someone else finally did too. We were not just numbers, we were lives, and our blood is in your hands now. Please don't let me vanish." Click. Silence. After the hearing, Agent Herrera became a public whistleblower, risking clearance, pension and protection. She stood before press cameras and said, "The Bureau lied to you. For decades, I helped uncover the truth, and I paid for it, but if I had to do it again, I would, because truth buried is truth that poisons. And I won't rot for their sins." Congress passed a bill declassifying Heronera operations. Names of the dead were restored in official records. Claire Donovan's name now appears on a marble memorial in Quantico, under the title, "Killed in Service, Confidential Assignment." But the damage had already been done. Monica Pritchard left the Bureau, moved to Portland, changed her number, teaches cyber forensics in a university now, but she keeps a sticky note on her monitor. It just says Echo Red Phantom, the password that almost saved them all. Alex Rummans exposed Series 1, a Pulitzer. He dedicated it to Claire and Daniel, and, in his final article, titled "The File That Was Never Closed," he wrote, "This isn't the story of a conspiracy. This is the story of silence, and the people who broke it, with a whisper." As for Kessler, he never testified again, never worked again, never rejoined the world. But sometimes, late at night, a message arrives on a private server he monitors. Always the same. "Are you ready to release the rest?" He never replies. But he never deletes them either, because somewhere out there, the Architect still breathes. Last scene, a man in a grey suit exits an elevator in Brussels. No name, no ID, only a small briefcase with the Heron insignia embossed inside the lining. He sits at a boardroom table, smiles faintly, and says, "Let's begin Phase 4, fade to black."